Welcome to What's the Point? A question we should all be asking ourselves, and the podcast by brand architect Bill Ellis.
Hi, everybody. Today on What's the Point? I'm joined by someone I only recently met, and our guest, Tracy Spears, was recommended and introduced to me by a former colleague from back in my corporate days. And it turns out that she and Tracy also work together. And this person who I've known for years said, "You have got to meet Tracy." And boy, am I glad I did. So Marilyn, thank you for making this connection. Tracy, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here. And thank you to Marilyn as well. So the list of people that she has said you have to talk to is very short. So when you jumped up on the list in my conversation with her, I was like, I got to make time. So I'm glad to be here.
Well, good. Yay, Marilyn. And it's very humbling to hear. So Tracy's path has taken her from competitive athletics to corporate leadership to coaching and developing leaders around the world. She just recently came back from a trip, which we might talk about in a little bit. She's the co-founder of Exceptional Leaders Lab, we'll talk about. She's author of several books, including What Exceptional Leaders Know and Leadership is a Verb. And she's the host of a podcast, her own podcast called Shift Out Loud. But here's what I like most about Tracy since I've gotten to know her. She's got an amazing list of accomplishments, but that's not gone to her head. It's her presence. She's grounded, she's modest, she's funny, and she's a real balance of grit and grace. And those are all qualities that I think we can all benefit from and learn to incorporate on our own. So this conversation is about becoming, it's about belonging, it's about leading with humanity. It's what happens when we stop trying to perform our way into worth and start living from who we actually are. So Tracy, welcome to What's the Point?
Wow. Listen, that's a lofty introduction. And I'll say thank you for the kind words. But yeah, and what a journey we all have to get there, right?
Yeah, and that's exactly why we do this podcast, is because any number of podcasts, and they're fabulous, talk about the accomplishments, and that's great. We want to move the curtain and see what's behind the path, what got the individual to accomplish what they've accomplished. And you've accomplished a lot. And so let's just jump right in. You have spent a lot of your life helping others to step forward and to be seen. How does it feel when you are on camera and the focus of being put forward?
Uncomfortable. Yeah, I mean, it's always an honor to be invited and asked, but I never do this without knowing I am simply a messenger in this whole deal. I think that's my purpose. It's what makes me successful is all of the things I've done wrong and that I actually learned a little bit from that, right? So, but I don't mind talking about all of the things now, but in the rear view mirror, right? Like when I look back, I was hiding so many things because I didn't, I was talking about authentic leadership, but I was just not being authentic in so many ways. And so, I am happy though to have the platform now. Well,
good. Well, spoiler alert, both for you and for the listeners, we're going to get into all those things from the rearview mirror,
all right.
Which we tend to look at with a little bit more assessment, if you will, when we get a little bit older in life. We look back and we assess ourselves, and we're going to have you do that a little bit for us today because it's going to help me, it's going to help our listeners, and I appreciate that. So when you do think back to the early years, for you, where does your story begin?
Well, listen, my story begins in a trailer park. I commonly reference the address at 848 North 91st East Place. So if you live in Tulsa, Oklahoma, you're familiar with where that neighborhood is. And, so for me, only child, mom doesn't graduate high school. Dad does graduate high school and is just one of the hardest working people I've ever met. And my story, like if I were to think back on the one thing that has crystallized and defined everything for me, it would be the night he was a truck driver. He came home from being on the road and he says to me, did you do your homework? And I said, well, the only thing I've got to, do for homework is decide what I want to be when I grow up by tomorrow, which is what we get kids, right? And so he goes, well, all right, well, I don't know what you're going to be, but whatever, if you're going to go to college, you're going to have to go on a softball scholarship. And so, he didn't say academic or basketball or anything. It was softball. He'd just seen that they were starting to offer women, female athletes, college scholarships, and that was what was on his mind. But then he did two things, Bill. One was he said, and that's not going to be easy because you're not even the best person on your team now. So, hear that at third grade. But then he also said, but none of that matters because all you've got to do is outwork everyone else. So that's where my story starts. It was just in that moment, and I'm still talking about it. I remember thinking, it's not talent. It's just, I just have to work hard. And that's served me well. And it's definitely probably been a liability also. I'm never the best person, in the room, but man, I will outwork anybody on anything. So that's probably, I would say, the thing. Then we all have that story, right? You have that story when you were a kid. Somebody says something to you, it shifts you in a way you can't quit telling the story. Have you ever told your story on this podcast?
No, I have not.
Tell me, what is it? So what shifts you?
Now, see, that's not fair for you to be shifting.
Okay.
I mean, just because you've got a podcast that talks about shifting, we'll take a little ownership here, and I'll defer to that. Thank you, though. Obviously, that had an impact on you. And you said you were in third grade. So third grade is what? About 7, 8, 9? Okay, yeah.
9, yeah.
Very young.
Yes.
Very young. And it's work hard and decide what you want to be for the rest of your life and go work at whatever it is. So that obviously had an impact on you, and it was your father. Were there others that helped shape that? Your mom or others in school, teachers or whatever?
Gosh, the list of teachers that I should be talking about is so long. Even from the principal of the school, the lady in the lunch line. I was someone that was on the school lunch program without knowing it. I only know that thinking back because I was doing the Memorex in the office every day at noon. Like I was working as an office aide. So that's how I look back. But when I think of all of the teachers around that time that saw something in me. Dolores Arrowwood, my 9th grade English teacher. It was just people that saw me and people that said, you're special, you're something, and I know they were saying it to every kid, but I think the teachers that do that, when you're not getting that at home, right? You're relying on the ecosystem. I also have a lady named Jan, who was my mom's best friend, that never had children, and she became like a second mom to me and my grandmother. So yeah, and I mean, with the list, I could name 15 people and tell you just about them. And I'm sure that when I look back on what they did for me, they probably wouldn't even remember it, right? But it was just that those nudges that, man, I'm not here without all of them for sure.
And that just brings to mind the phrase that it takes a village. And for our younger listeners, I'm not going to get into it here, but I will invite you to Google what a Memorex machine is.
Is that, did I even call it? Yeah, I know. Isn't it? Yeah.
Anyway, things do change and things do advance, but what has remained constant, Tracy, from what I know of you, is that impact and the impact of your father giving you that direction, but also all of the people that you just mentioned. How has that helped form who you are today and how you translate that or give that back in your coaching style and your leadership style?
I think the biggest thing that the thread that connects all of them is just that they gave me a lot of confidence that I had a tendency and still do to be very self-critical. And, I have an inner critic, not an inner coach. I'm trying to convert that still at this age. But I think they just gave me a little bit of hope that, I could make some decisions that were going to define what was going to happen to me, that whatever was happening wasn't, it wasn't a pre-gone, it wasn't pre-decided for me. Like I have been so fortunate that I've never felt like a victim. I've acted like one at times for sure back as a kid, but like I've never felt like I couldn't change my circumstance. I think all of those people helped me with that, right? They said the right thing at the right time, or they pointed out something that I was not seeing, and that gave me hope. And so that's, that still happens, right? That still happens when you start to see something with a little confirmation bias and you can't see it any other way. And
Yeah.
somebody nudges you in a different way. My business partner, Wally Schmader, is the best at that. And the reason I get more mad at him than anyone, because sometimes I want to roll around in it, but he's like, whatever you're not changing, you're choosing. And so that's been a great reminder. But yeah, tough lessons.
I had a friend of mine say this the other day. A group of us were talking, and she said, "The truth will set you free, but first it'll get you angry." I'll clean up what she said.
Yeah,
But having that little bit of anger is probably good for us to change. So let me get back to not being the best softball player in third grade, being told you weren't. Thanks, Dad. How did that turn out? How did your softball career advance? And I think you became somewhat accomplished at that after all.
Listen, I was very fortunate. My dad was offered a job in a different school district. And so, this guy sees me play and he says, "Hey, would you move into our school district so Tracy can play on our team?" And he's like, "Yeah, no, I drive a truck and all the things." And so the guy offers him a job at the Ford glass plant. And so we move into this neighborhood, like literally one block in, so we can be in that neighborhood. And it was a school that was known for their athletics. It was a high school here in Tulsa. And college coaches were, often in the stands. And so Marita Hines, who was ended up being my college coach, offered me a full athletic scholarship, and I played softball in college for the University of Oklahoma. So that had a lot of challenges in it because I was injured my freshman year and a bunch of things, which, by the way, I'm not going to say everything was easy. It wasn't. I was a utility player, so I could play any position. Again, knowing that, that was going to be how I got to be on the team. I was able to kind of be just good enough at things that we moved around. But, what I learned, about team sports and all the leadership piece of all of that in athletics, I don't know how you get that if you don't play, in a band or on some kind of team sports or something. Because, man, that really...
Yeah.
I think sets me up for success as a leadership coach later, for sure.
Yeah, sport is wonderful at teaching all of us different lessons about life. It's kind of sad when you see now that everyone is starting to get their third graders saying you will be in the professional league of your choice, or more likely the professional league of my choice.
That's right. That's right.
So you went to the University of Oklahoma, Boomer Sooners, and they're known for having a pretty solid softball team year in and year out. So you must have, a utility player or not. That's an interesting comment. Utility player means, as Tracy said, you can play most any position. And when you get out of the sports world and you get into the real world, the life that we live, business or otherwise, having that flexibility and having that ability to move around and fill gaps has to be helpful, is it not?
For sure. 100%. And, I was always looking for my opportunity, not knowing when it was going to come. And, but I want to go back and say, I was at OU long before they were winning all these national championships. So, my group brought the win-loss record way down. So, we like to say, we're the legacy people in there. But gosh, it's been super fun to watch them. And I'm sad I did not play for Patty Gasso, who's the coach there now. But I'm still so incredibly grateful that Marita Hines was my coach at the time. But yeah, I think being able to not just accept, it's this or nothing, have that very narrow definition of success has been super helpful for me, because maybe I'm not going to be able to succeed here, but let me figure out another way to do that. So yeah, I think that definitely has translated to my career for sure.
As you look back, is there a turning point in any part of your life, be it sport or be it business? And by turning point, I mean, did something click or change inside of you? Did something light up, or was there something that just impacted you to the point that you had a noticeable change?
Well, that list is long. I'll rattle them off. Getting injured my freshman year, that was a turning point. My parents disowned me when they found out I was gay at 22. That was a huge turning point. Being fired after 29 years in a job, that was a huge turning point. So, yeah, there's been the list is long of those things. There's so many things that, as I look back, and you're forcing me to do that right now, when I think about it, that, in the moment, you don't know what kind of change it's going to create. And so there's a lot of fear. And I held on. I have a tendency to hold on to things too long or to go back to things. I don't necessarily embrace change easily, but in the rear view, you look back and go, sometimes things happen, in a way that on my own, I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
But, the forced nature of that, like being fired is what comes to mind. I'm literally in this company for 29 years. I'd still be there today, Bill, if they didn't fire me. And I should have left a long time before that, but I didn't know when I was in that organization that what I knew would translate outside of that organization. And so I didn't have any confidence in that. And so Wally, who is my now business partner, we both got fired on the same day at the same time. And because of that, it launched the Exceptional Leaders Lab. So that was a big turning point as well.
I so appreciate your willingness and openness to go back and touch on some of these points, which you probably don't think about every day and might bring back some painful thoughts, but also focus on what they've turned into. And that's why we ask these questions, because I share with you the impact of being invited to work elsewhere. Is that a kind enough way to say get fired?
That's right.
And it is devastating. You had 29 years, I had 25 years. And the question is, the impact is there. But I've also heard something recently that says, learn the lesson, leave the event. So when you had that event, eventually the hurt and the pain didn't go away, but it started to segue to, like you said, there's a silver lining. You ended up with Wally starting a fabulous business that helps just countless people, and the ripple effect of that, who knows? So when did you start to realize the positive aspect of not being, I'll say, chained to or committed to that long-term career?
So immediately when it happened, and since you've been through this, I don't know what your experience was, but I got on the call and the gentleman that I reported to said HR's on the line, and so I knew what was happening because I'd been on the other side of those. And by the way, they told us they were going to fire us. You make too much money and all the things, but we watched 30 other vice presidents get fired, thinking they weren't going to get to us. But the answer to the question is, immediately I was on the floor. I could not imagine what was going to happen, the fear, all the things that, that I had held on to. And the minute I started and Wally, he said, I'll call you when it's over. And he was immediately elated. And so we had the juxtaposition of these two reactions. He's like, listen, they did for us what we wouldn't do for ourselves. Like we have an opportunity. We kind of knew that it was looming, so we hurried up when we wrote a book together, and that really helped. So it wasn't really a side hustle because we were working at 4:00 in the morning every Tuesday morning. I was up writing a chapter, and we did that for a year. He wrote a chapter, I would write a chapter, we would send it back and forth. But the day that, that was released was 3 months before we were fired. And so we had a little bit of an off-ramp in that. So it wasn't that I was even, like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to make money again. I think it was just the ego piece of that, that somebody would say you're not wanted, you're not important enough for us to keep around. That was hard to get over. The change in routine. I'm a very structured person. I think athletics helped me with that. Like I go to the office, I'm actually sitting here in my home and doing this podcast, but that's very unusual. I normally go to the office, but I've just sold that office. So I'm trying to work from home. So it was the change in routine. But I'll say this, within about 90 days, that's when I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. But it wasn't fast. And it took me a few years to get over the sting. I always thought that there should be a book written about what they don't tell you when you get fired. Like nobody reached out and I wasn't getting any emails and all the things, but they didn't know how to get a hold of me and who do you reach out to? It was really hard. And I'll ask you this, you can just say yes or no. Did you have the same? Was it a hard experience for you to go through that?
Oh, exceptionally.
Yeah.
And to have bounced back after 90 days, which you said it wasn't quick, to me, that was lightning speed.
Yeah.
I was pretty devastated. And part of that devastation is what you touched on, Tracy. Suddenly all of the people that were your acquaintances and friends and whatever you want to call them, you suddenly become persona non grata. And
Yeah.
part of that is the people are afraid of what you're going to feel. And it took me a long time to understand that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a combination of being rejected and then being kind of ghosted, if you will, to use a current term,
That's right.
by the people. I had suppliers that were my best friends.
Of course.
And when I was no longer in my position to help supply their business, the calls quit coming. The lunch invites quit coming. And that's just life, but it was very difficult for me to get through. So yeah, and I do appreciate your thought of someone writing a book, because especially these days, I mean, tens of thousands of people are being let go.
Yeah.
And
As we speak today.
Exactly. Yeah. Today, yesterday, tomorrow. And it's mind-boggling to me. But everyone's being sent out without a clue.
Yeah.
And we all do it differently, and we all get through it somehow, some way. But it sure would be nice if there was a manual.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this to your listeners. As my therapist has told me many times, we're just not that important. She's like, Tracy, listen, I mean, so, and, once you kind of can embrace that. I had an amazing full circle moment, though, earlier this year. That same company invited me to come back and keynote their annual meeting. And so I did, 7 years later, I did get to have some closure there. And I was so emotional going into it, and then seeing everyone and realizing immediately, it was just part of the reorg and the restructure and all the things. But the relationships were still the same. But I don't think a lot of people get to go back like I got to. And so Wally, by the way, I was like, you've got to go back with me. And he goes, no, I'll never see those people again. I'm not going back. Oh my gosh.
Well,
So,
and both of them are very valid. Both are very valid paths.
yeah.
And it depends on the individual. So again, those people listening, if you're one of the unfortunate that recently or at any point's been invited to work elsewhere, just know that you're not alone. Know that there's life after that, and try to find what the lesson is from the tragedy. So that brings me to this point. When I first started talking, I said that part of this is going to be a conversation about belonging, and you've belonged in a lot of different places. But you've also had seasons of not belonging, of being outside of that, if you will. What's your relationship been with belonging, however you want to define that, with people, with places, with your identity, whatever the case might be?
Well, I think when you are raised like I am, you belong when you are performing. So I have done well my whole life in performance-based positions, performance-based relationships. And so I made and created the belonging because of what I would do and how I would perform. So the liability of that it's been harder for me in my personal life, to relax. It's been harder in my personal life to know that just, I'm enough, just moving about the world, just I don't have to do anything. So I would say now I've wasted so much time and energy trying to belong in places where either I didn't belong anyway, I shouldn't have tried to belong, or places where nothing was required and I just didn't know it. So I have a real interesting relationship with that belonging thing. I think with my parents disowning me, that shook me to my core. And, only child, 22, no money. I didn't actually get my degree in the 4 years because I went to play softball.
Yeah.
And whatever, GPA you had to have to play, that was what I graduated.
Mhm.
That's what I ended up with. I ended up getting my degree, I don't know, maybe 5 years later, 10 years later. I mean, I do have it, but it was going through a local college trying to get my credits later. So when they disowned me and I mean, I was literally, there was no siblings. My grandmother was, very ill. So I look at that time though now as I was prepared for that in a weird way because of the performance-based messages that I got, so in some way, and my dad stood there that day and he said, "I'm gonna ask you a question. If you say you're not, then you can stay, and if you say you are, then we're gonna disown you." So I remember I can tell you what he had on and what I had on standing in the living room. And so, I made that decision that day and said, "Well, you can disown me for, being gay, but I mean, you didn't raise me to be a liar." So, I mean, like it just all of those lessons and all the things. So in corporate America, I never felt like I belonged because if your family disowns you, your company will disown you if they find out. And there were pockets of people that found out and they did disown me. They, uninvited me to meetings and, the rumor mill. But Wally was really the first person I reported to him for a while. And he's my best friend to this day. And I remember one time he said, I was the national sales trainer for the organization. And he said, "Why aren't you going to the meeting out in the West Coast?" And I said, "Well," I said, last time I went, I took my girlfriend and they did not invite me this year." And he said, "Well, who are they? So I don't like them anymore." And, it was kind of a little funny moment, but that's when I understood the value of allies. I had never even talked to anybody about that. And so, he was really instrumental in, me standing up, and just being a little bit more authentic, and also some people on my local teams. So yeah, you asked a big question with a lot of layers for sure on the belonging piece.
That's exactly
Yeah,
what we hope to do. And
yeah,
again, I just want to thank you for for putting yourself out there and being vulnerable. It's not easy.
yeah.
But when we do that, I found that we learn more about ourselves. But in this case, it's going to help listeners. I can't tell you how many, I can't tell you what they're going to learn, but that's exactly why we do this show, is the hope that someone listening will have an aha moment and that it will have an impact on their life, and that they too can start to move towards embracing their purpose and being true to themselves. So you've talked about, you've kind of rebuilt belonging in your own way. If I'm understanding it correctly, you've kind of shifted how you define or see belonging, quote unquote. Tell me about that.
Well, I think that there's a structure, a societal structure that says that you should want to belong to your family, you should want to belong to a religion, you should want to belong to, so all of these man-made kind of, if you will, structures. And for me, I have agency and I have choice about where I want to belong now. I don't feel like I had that before. I would go for months, Bill, to my parents' house, ring the doorbell. They would answer that, my mother would answer it and slam the door, and then I'd just get in my car and leave. Like, I just kept thinking, this is where I'm supposed to belong. This is my family. This is, and I stayed in that company because that's where I belonged. And so I was doing a lot of things out of duty and responsibility. And now I look back and go, belonging is, I get to decide, I get to choose. I don't have to fit what everybody else says. But let me tell you, I was a real chicken about that for way too many years. I gave all my power over to different structures, different, communities. And I still struggle with that. I'm not going to lie. I still, at times go, this is what I should do. I mean, I think it makes me a good human being, but it also is, some of that's probably outdated. And every year I think about who are going to be the people that I'm going to spend my time and energy with. And it's not that I get rid of any friends or anything. It's just, I'm very conscious now of,
Mhm.
is this a relationship that, fuels me, or is this a relationship that is holding me back? Or is it like, I do think about that, the way, how do I feel after I've spent, time with somebody,
Yeah.
consistently, so those are things that, I now am very choosy about, and I'm a lot more conscious of for sure.
That's a truly significant life shift. And I appreciate, again, you sharing that. One point to make is it's not a snap of the fingers.
No,
It takes time. and
That's right.
it's something that evolves. So I want to shift a little bit from that to all of this kind of leading towards your position of leadership and international author and traveler and speaker and coach. But let me ask you this. You said earlier, and I'm going to paraphrase, so correct me if I'm taking this out of context. You said, I wasted a lot of my time trying to, I'll say, fit in or trying to whatever. If I were your coaching client, and I said that to you, that I'd wasted a lot of time doing these different things, what would you tell me?
I would tell you to pay attention to what gives you energy. I would tell you to pay attention to your own compass instead of modeling or trying to fit in an ecosystem that might not be supporting you living your best life. My podcast is called Shift Out Loud because of those moments that when you make the change, everybody knows it. It's an out loud, like everybody, it changes how you move about the world.
Mhm.
And so I think most people don't inventory with some regularity. How did that exchange make me feel? Am I living my purpose? Is this really what I want? Am I happy? Am I full of joy? Like, I think we are so busy giving to other people or trying to fit what everyone else thinks we should do that, I would say, and as a coach I do, is I would ask a very simple question. What do you want? Like, no, what do you want?
Mhm.
Like, you've told me what your company wants from you. I know what your relationship, what do you want? And when you ask somebody that 3 or 4 times in a row with some regularity, it's very seldom that there aren't
Yeah.
tears in that because the answer on the other side of that is usually, I have no idea,
Yeah.
like, because we don't take the time. And so, for me, that's what it's all about now. It's just, and I'm in the last, I'm over the 5th inning for sure on this deal. I'm in the 6th or 7th, and so it's easier to be braver now. But boy, do I wish I would have done that earlier.
Well, a couple of comments. First, I asked you that specifically because I wanted to know if you still felt that you wasted time doing what you were doing. And based on your answer and based on where you are, you weren't wasting time at all. You were learning. You were going through experiences that you channeled and transformed into something positive. And the advice you just gave, the comments that you just made, Tracy, I might go back and cut that out because that defines exactly why I do this show.
Nice.
It's
Thank you.
exactly why I do this show, because I know in my case, I didn't know my purpose. I didn't know what the point was. What do you want is a question. Simon Sinek says, what's your why? My saying is, what's the point? And that's a question that can just keep getting asked and asked and asked as you drill down and peel the onion or whatever you want to say. So thank you for sharing that. We don't all know our purpose. We don't all have the ability to see that clearly. And it does take time and it does take other people helping us and it does take open-mindedness. And in the case of this show, I do it because having visual audio proof, delivering people that have the message that, yes, you can,
Yeah.
and it can work out and purpose will come is exactly why I do the show.
Well, listen, and it'll come with some reflection. It'll come with some prompting. It doesn't come if you don't make the time, right? It doesn't come, or it comes, in my case, a lot later than it needed to. And so, I think I do like goal setting at the end of the year, like New Year's resolutions. A lot of people are jaded about them. But what I like about it is it's a forced time on the calendar to say, to reflect, right? So whether you do that monthly or whatever, I mean, at a minimum once a year to go, wow, am I on track or off track?
Yeah.
Do I even like the track I'm on? Like just that contemplation of that, I do a lot of coaching for executive teams and I love retro meetings. And a retro meeting is, that you have to look back in short sprints, not like over a year, not an annual
No.
review, but how did the week go? How did the day go? How did that meeting go? Like
Yeah.
most people, the further away from an event, you start to emotionally discount the value of the learning. So, but if you can capture that learning pretty quickly, then you have an opportunity to make some meaningful changes. And I feel the same way about the way my life is, right? I waited too long to do my retro meetings. I was I was slogging through it and trying to, get to where I thought I was supposed to be, only to find, wait a minute, I'm not sure this is where I was supposed to be either. And then
Well,
just, slogging, I guess is the right word for sure.
well, I will again counter you by saying you started your retro reviews, your retro meetings exactly when you needed to and exactly at the right time.
That's right. That's
A lot of things in our lives, in my life, I look back and say, wow, what if?
It's a nice reframe, by the way. Well done. I liked it.
Well, I'm a reframer, so that's
I like
that's part of what I've learned. Part of what I've learned is exactly that, Tracy. It is how do we look at things? And we talked about that earlier. How did you look at getting hurt as a freshman? How did you look at being let go after 29 years? So we have to change and reframe that and say, let's learn the lesson and leave the event. I'm real quick to go to the negative side, believe me. But I've learned. My wife and I have this discussion with some regularity, and she rolls her eyes quite a bit. I'm a big fan of not using the word should or should have,
Okay.
because to me that's kind of like guilt. I should have. I didn't. I failed. If you say I could have, and you didn't, but you could have, that's more optimistic. What would have happened had you done that? So that's a little subtlety that she and I
Okay.
chat
I,
about.
yeah, I can get there. I agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do agree with you. I also think that, that idea of however you frame it and the look back on that, if you use it for fuel and not you use the word shame. I do see a lot of people in my coaching do that, and they stay in that they should have. But have you ever read Annie Duke's book, Thinking in Bets?
I have it. It's in my stack of books I've not yet read.
Okay. Well, it's super good. What I love about it, the one line that I love about it is that, you can't evaluate your decisions based on outcomes. You have to evaluate them based on what were the inputs. What did you know when you made the decision? And that has really freed me from the shame piece. So like I offer that to you because, if something turns out great and you go, wow, that was a good decision, or if it doesn't, you go, oh, that was a terrible decision. And neither one of those things are true. What's the only thing that's true is when you made the decision, was it a good decision at the time? And that just having that little bit of freedom from that has been really helpful for me and a lot of my clients. So yeah, I'm a big plug for her.
Good. I think that's a pretty decent segue to ask you this. Moving into leadership, leadership is stepping forward. Leadership's also stepping back. How do you see those different perspectives?
Well, I think when you said leadership is, and you pause, I mean, leadership is influence. That's all it is, I think. And so when you think about, the idea of stepping forward or back, I went to a boardroom where you're either saying the thing that needs to be said or you're listening to the thing that needs to be heard. So that was where I went literally when you asked the question. But I think the ability to influence rooms that you're in, regardless of your business card, regardless of your tenure or whatever, I think that's all leadership is. It's, are you creating a legacy in the sense that you are a good listener, you are thoughtful, you're strategic, all the things on the list of what we want our leaders to be. Are you embodying that in any way? That's going to define if you're a leader or not your age. Not your, nothing else. It would just be, how you are, what your intentions are when you walk in a room, right? Mm-hmm. And I want to say this, I do think that's been the biggest difference for me, Tracy, what am I, 3.0 from 1.0 is I thought way too much about myself in the beginning of my life. I mean, probably still at times, my friends would say that, but, oh my gosh, am I good enough? And, all of it leading with all the insecurities, that's really just being super self-focused. And I didn't see it as such. I thought it was humility. I thought it was, self-awareness and all the things. And it's the opposite of all of that, right? So I think for me, I now think that, me thinking of everyone else, I have to make a decision before I get on this podcast with you, before later when I'm on with my clients. What's my intention? My intention is to serve. My intention is to be a good listener. My intention is to be thoughtful in my comments. Like, that doesn't just happen naturally for me. I have to think about it still. And I think the practice of that has made me a better leader for sure. I think of all the early years, oh man, so many learnings, and most of them were couched around being just too self-focused, right?
Yeah, ego can be a terrible thing to waste, but it's something I should waste more often. Which brings me to just another question on leadership. When I said leadership can also be stepping back, when have you led best by letting others lead?
Yeah. So I remember one time a guy named Steve came to my office, and I thought I was going to be promoted. And when he got there, I had this, this amazing sales team. We were like a top 5 out of 100, over 140 teams. And he walked in and he said, we were all ready to celebrate. And he said, listen, I'm here, but I'm not here to promote you. And I was like, what? I was stunned because we were doing so well. And he said, well, the salespeople, I was the sales manager. He said, the average salesperson in your office, in your organization, is below the company average because you're doing all the work. And so whenever your salespeople, when their average is, goes up above the company average, I'll be back to promote you. But until then, you're not a leader, you're a producer. And that was the shift that I needed to hear. And that changed everything. And that was, I'd like to say from that point forward, I got it, but it took another 10 years. I'm a slow study on some of that. But I started investing more in, not having the right answer, but getting to the right answer. That was really a hard part of my journey because I thought that I had to have all the answers, and I needed to get all the answers, and I think I lost a lot of really great people because I didn't give them that moment to shine. I think I stole it from them. I think I was, I was so afraid of, I had such heavy imposter syndrome that, if somebody else had a better answer, I felt threatened by that instead of being excited by it. So I look back on that now and go, I could have saved myself a lot of grief by just leveraging all the smart people in the room.
Your answers are just profound. I just have to say that they're profound. One of the things that popped into my head when you were talking about that visit from Steve is the mistake that a lot of people make is taking the top producer, the top salesperson, and making them sales manager, and they're completely different roles. So what people end up doing is taking their best salesperson out of selling and putting them into a position where they're maybe not best equipped. So that's just another thing for anyone out there listening. That's not the best move you can make, I don't think. Let me move on a little bit more.
Can I double click on that for just a second?
Oh, sure, please, 100%.
Because I always think there's two tool boxes, right? There's a producer toolbox, which is you're super, super good at your job and you can deliver and meet expectations and check all the boxes. But that leadership toolbox, if we were to ask your audience, what do you love about your favorite leader? There wouldn't be one producer thing they would say. They would say inspirational, caring, a good listener, all the things. That's a completely different toolbox. And so I do think that sometimes we run the career of a producer by giving them a leadership title, because if you're a great producer, to say as great as you are, none of that matters. And now all that matters, it could be soul sucking, right? That you now have to feed and give, and help create confidence in other people. So I think you're right. I think sometimes the person that isn't the best producer, but the person that cares deeply about the success of everybody on the team, the person that is listening, the person that is technical in the sense that they can describe what success looks like, the person that can be strategic, that's your better leader. Not, oftentimes, but to ask somebody to be great at both is a heavy lift.
Yes.
I do think leaders are made. I don't think they're born. I believe strongly that you can. I'm an example of that. I was a terrible leader. I'm not saying I'm a great leader now, but I'm a whole lot better. And I'm a whole lot better because I made a decision I needed to be better. And so but I think that, unfortunately, organizations don't get that right. And I think, sometimes wouldn't it be great if, and I wish I would have done this, you get promoted and it's just a standard that in 90 days from now, we're going to have another conversation. Is this even a promotion you wanted or liked? So you don't get a bump in pay. You get nothing. You just get to see what does the leader really do in 90 days or 6 months. And then you get to choose. You can go right back to being a producer or you can step into the leadership. But, not letting it be because of the money or the prestige or the clout, and letting it be because you genuinely care deeply about making other people better. I mean, that would be amazing, right?
What's amazing is how you answer questions before I ask them, because the next question I was going to ask is, what does creating space for someone look like in the real world in human terms? And I think you just touched on that beautifully. Another question, going back to something you said earlier in our conversation. You said, I have an inner critic. I don't have an inner coach. What are you doing to change that, if anything?
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I am wired with an inner critic. I have a coach. She doesn't show up enough, and I'm trying to be kinder. I've actually saved every thank you card that I've ever gotten, which is interesting. It probably does not speak well of me, but every once in a while I'll kind of pull one out and go, "Oh, okay, I'm enough." Okay, I don't think that we take the nice things that are said and the compliments, and that's not an input that's as strong as somebody saying, "Hey, you really aren't that good." So I do try to balance that a bit by being more objective. And people, we do a lot of 360s in our work, Bill, and and I'll get on and deliver the results, and the first will be all the nice things that people say about them, and then the next will be the work-ons, and then the third part will be what's the plan. And to a T, men or women, it doesn't matter. I will start saying, well, let me tell you some of the nice things that your colleagues said, and just get to the bad stuff.
Yeah.
No, just tell,
Yeah.
like nobody wants to hear that. And I always say, no, no, no. It's super important that this input is as important to you as some of the work-ons that you have, because if you only focus on the critical things, it's hard to develop a better sense of how you're being evaluated, and you'll undervalue some of your gifts. You'll think, oh, everybody's kind, everybody. No, not true.
Yeah.
That's not true. Like, that's a superpower, and you need to be leading with that. So yeah, I think we all are, I think most of us, not everybody. I have met people that do not have an inner critic at all, and those are people I don't like to hang out with very long. But I think we're all, I think we are all way more sensitive to the negative things that are said, for sure.
Well, like you said, male, female, it doesn't matter. I think it's human nature. We go to the negativity. And there are a lot of people that I coach, a lot of people that I know, where, just like you said, let's look at the positives. Because if you don't have those positives, almost always you don't have a chance to be successful in what you call your work-ons.
That's right.
You have to embrace that, and it's all a matter of true humility. We have to accept our good parts exactly as they are, the same way we accept our negatives exactly as they are. And that can be hard. That can be really hard. There are people I know that say, well, so many people talk about how good you are, whatever, and they say, oh, it's just me. Yeah, exactly. It's just you. It's just you. So let me move on quickly. What's bringing you the most joy these days?
The most joy right now for me is the ability to be present and still and not feel that I have to perform to be part of a community. The thing that brings me a lot of joy is, reading, doing puzzles. Probably the most joy is just knowing that, as you said, all of the things that I have learned, I can use now in service of saving people time and in my coaching business, and saving people, just helping people think differently about, how they're moving about the world. And that I love standing on stage, not to stand on stage. I love standing on stage because something's going to be said It might even be from their neighbor. It might not be from me. That's someone's going to think differently because of that. And if I'm a conduit for that, man, that's super joyful when somebody later says, that one, you said that one thing, and man, I started doing this, and and I'm like, wow, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, the spark of knowing that what you intended to do, which is to pass on something that other people will benefit from, that's the magic. That's feeding your purpose. You talked a lot about travel, and we're getting up close to the time that you committed, so thank you for that. But I I honestly could speak with you for hours.
I want to
I'm
just,
enjoying this. I
I'm
believe
good.
our
I can go till, I can go a
listeners
little
will as
longer.
well.
Yeah,
Um,
sorry about that. I can go a little bit longer. I was
we
turning
can-
off the alarm, but I'm good. I'm good. So
okay, no, it's we'll be fine. You talked about things that bring you joy, and before we started recording, you talked about your most recent trip, a quick visit to Ireland, and then from there you went to your speaking gig, and tell us what kind of eye-opening experience you had there.
yeah, so I ended up in Amsterdam. I probably should have answered when you said what brings me joy. I am seeing somebody, and I've been seeing somebody who is a chef, and Shannon is somebody that really embraces like the culture of wherever she is. And so we went to Amsterdam. I travel all over the world. I will fly to Singapore for a meeting and be home 3 days late. Like I just don't embed myself in cultures. And so she had me do a food tour for the first. I've never done a food tour before, and I just want to say this: if you're traveling internationally or maybe even domestically, do a food tour, whatever city you're in. You're just going to hear things and see things that you won't in any other way. And so it was an amazing experience. So I loved it. I go to Amsterdam all the time, but now it went from being a meh city to me to I can't wait to go back. And it was because of that food tour for sure.
What a great tip. I travel a lot more than I ever thought I would in my current marriage. Thank goodness for that. But travel teaches me so much. And when you say take the food tour, that's certainly a great way to do it. But just learn and take a little bit of time to learn the culture. And whether it's international or whether it's across the US of A, if this is where you are, or just get out of your village, get out of your city, get out of your state, get out of where you are, because there's so much more to learn. And if we do more of that as a society, I believe it will start to allow us to potentially see the similarities rather than the differences.
For
And
sure.
if we do that through food, excellent.
Yeah.
That's a great way to do it. So yeah, I love that. I think that's a great idea. What, if anything, were you expecting me to ask that maybe I didn't?
I came into this without any expectations to be totally present for you. I didn't think about a script or any answers I was going to give. So I have no expectations and just very grateful to be here.
Okay, great. Well, hopefully the questions would not have matched the script you would have written anyway.
Never do. I never do.
Because we certainly try to go down not that the traditional road or the traditional path, as I said earlier, is wrong, but we try to get behind the scenes, and I very much appreciate that. And speaking with you about becoming and belonging and leadership and resilience and joy and growth and learning and tragedy and hurt and harm and everything that makes up who Tracy Spears is. The question that I ask every guest, Tracy, help us understand, what's the point?
Connection. The point is growth. The point is love. The point is community. I know that. I know that in my soul. The point is that we need to be cheering each other on, that we're not separate. We are all connected. And I think the point is just to be able to be present in that in a way that you can show up for yourself, but more so show up for the people that you surround yourself with.
I'm not surprised. What a brilliant answer. Thank you. Thank you
Thank you.
so much. Tracy, thank you for being here. Like I started off by saying, your presence and your openness and vulnerability, and your humanity. The person that you are is amazing. I'm grateful to Marilyn again. Thank you for having connected us. I thank you for being my guest, and I wish you nothing but the best as you move forward.
Thank you. I appreciate your time too, Bill.
Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in. And if you like what you've heard, please subscribe so you don't miss an episode. We can promise there is value to be gained in every one. Taking a second to rate, review, and share the show helps make us more discoverable and enables others to find out what's the point. If you'd like to learn more about Bill Ellis and his services, please visit his website, billellis.com. See you next time.